Come Closer to the Hearth, Episode 2, When Your Body Feels Like a Stranger, on frequency, containment, and learning to return. Come closer to the hearth. I'm glad you're here. After recording my first episode, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about next. I even had the title, Return to Your Body. It felt right, it felt hopeful, and if I'm being honest, it sounded finished. I thought I was going to sit here and tell you about the moment I finally came back into my body after spending so many years disconnected from it. For a little while, I thought I knew when that moment was. I thought maybe it happened while I was in labor with my twins. But then I started thinking about it, really thinking about it. And the more I did, the less honest that story felt. Because the truth is, I don't think I've come back into my body yet. I'm not sure I remember the last time I truly felt at home inside of it. In fact, I'm starting to wonder if I ever did. And maybe it's fitting that I'm sitting with this question during Mercury retrograde. I've always been drawn to astrology, and I tend to think of retrogrades as an invitation to revisit, to reflect, to reconsider, to return to conversations, memories, beliefs, and stories that we thought we already understood. And here I was, preparing an entire episode about returning to my body, only to find myself returning to the question itself. Maybe that's what this episode needs to be. Not a lesson about how to return to your body, not 5 easy steps to feeling safe. Not a story with a beautiful ending where I tell you I figured it all out. I haven't. Instead, I want to sit beside the fire with you and ask a question. What happens when your own body feels like a stranger? I don't remember very much of my childhood. There are reasons for that. Some I understand, and perhaps some I don't. There were experiences in my childhood that no child should have to endure, and I'm still deciding on how much of those stories I will ever choose to share publicly. But there are moments that I remember. I remember dancing. I remember moving. I remember singing. And when I try to remember what those moments actually felt like, the word that comes to me is frequency and vibration. I remember the feeling in my throat when I carried a note and the sensation of a tone moving through me. I remember hearing music and feeling my arms and legs respond to its frequency. Movement wasn't something I had to analyze. My body just simply answered. Looking back now, knowing that I'm autistic, I recognize that some of what I was doing with my voice was probably vocal stimming. I didn't have those words then. I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't know what stimming was. I only knew that it felt good. It felt good to make sound. It felt good to move. It felt good to vibrate. Those are some of the few moments I remember because those were some of the moments when I was truly present. When I first started thinking about this episode, I thought perhaps I left my body after my spinal surgery. But the more I sit with that, the more I realize that isn't true. I think I had already learned to leave my body long before then. Maybe dancing and singing weren't simply things I enjoyed. Maybe they were ways I found myself again. When I was 10 years old, I underwent major, life-saving spinal surgery. I had severe scoliosis. My spine had two curves. One was around 65 degrees and the other one around 35. Suddenly, my body was something that needed to be examined, discussed, corrected, saved. I spent about a year bedridden in recovery. And afterward, the body I lived in was different. Before my surgery, I had dreamed of becoming a ballerina. I loved interpretive dance. I performed, I moved, and then I was told I couldn't dance anymore. I've talked before about grieving the little girl who wanted to become a ballerina, but now I wonder if I've been grieving something even deeper. Maybe I didn't only lose a dream. Maybe I lost one of the only languages my body and I still shared. My muscles remember still. I know that because I can feel it when I watch other people dance. It aches. There's something inside of me that knows those movements, that remembers, something that wants to answer, but can't. And for a long time, I think I understood that grief as I wanted to be a dancer. Now I wonder if part of it is I knew how to find myself through movement, and then I couldn't move that way anymore. But dancing wasn't the only way I experienced my body. I also sang, and singing is different because technically I can still do it. There are no rods preventing my vocal cords from vibrating. No doctor told me I couldn't sing. My body is still physically capable of making those sounds. But somewhere along the way, I learned not to. My mother used to make fun of my voice. She told me I sounded very nasally. And I remember we would watch singing competition shows together. Sometimes she would compliment singers who made sounds that reminded me of the things my own voice could do. There's this particular way my voice could hitch. That's the only word I really have for it. And I remember sitting there as a child wondering, what's the difference? Why is that beautiful when their voice does it, but annoying when mine does? I don't know if I'm a good singer. And I think that's important for me to say, because even now when I talk about missing singing, I feel this impulse to justify it, to explain whether I was talented, whether I could hit the right notes, whether anyone else thought I was good, as though I need to earn the right to miss it. But when I was a little girl, I didn't care. I wasn't singing because I wanted someone to listen. I wasn't trying to perform. I wasn't trying to show off. I wasn't trying to be impressive. I liked the feeling of singing. The frequency, the vibration, the feeling of a note moving through my throat. I don't particularly want to be noticed. I'm I'm okay with being small. I'm okay with not being special. I don't need someone to discover that I secretly have an incredible singing voice. Maybe I don't, but that's not the point. I just want to enjoy frequency again. I want to make a sound without wondering what that sound says about me, without asking whether it's beautiful, without asking whether it's annoying, without worrying that someone might think I'm trying to impress them. I just want the sound to be mine. And there are moments now, especially when I'm listening to one of my favorite songs, when I desperately want to sing along. I feel the urge. I know the note. My body wants to make the sound. But before I can give in to it, something happens. Humiliation sets in. Panic. I start feeling shaky. Sometimes I feel almost as though I could pass out. So I don't sing. But I've learned to do this strange little thing instead. I flex my vocal cords without actually making a sound. I let my throat almost form the note, almost carry the tone. I can make my throat feel almost as if I'm producing it, but nothing comes out. A silent note. It's the best thing I can do for myself right now. And for a while, maybe I could have looked at that and thought it was sad. And maybe I still do sometimes. But now, I'm wondering if there's something else there too. Because, again, my body hasn't forgotten. She still reaches for the note somewhere inside me. She still hears the music. She still wants to answer. My conscious mind may feel like she's a stranger, but perhaps my body remembers something about me that I've forgotten. My muscles remember dancing. My vocal cords remember singing. My body may feel like a stranger to me, but maybe she still remembers me. I think this is where something changed. As a little girl, singing happened from inside my body. I felt the vibration. I felt the frequency. I felt the pleasure of making sound. But somewhere along the way, I started experiencing my voice from the outside. Instead of feeling the note, I imagined someone hearing it. Instead of feeling the vibration, I imagined the judgment. Do I sound annoying? Do I sound ridiculous? Does someone think I'm trying to show off? Am I drawing too much attention to myself? And eventually, no one had to tell me to be quiet anymore. I learned to contain myself. Maybe that's another way we leave our bodies. Not always by disappearing completely. Sometimes we stay. But instead of inhabiting ourselves from the inside, we begin observing ourselves through everyone else's eyes. We monitor, we adjust, we mask, we make ourselves quieter, smaller, more acceptable. And slowly, the question changes. It stops being what feels good inside my body, and it becomes what does my body look and sound like to everyone else? I think I've lived with that question for a very long time. So, if I wasn't fully living in my body, where did I go? I think I went into my mind. I became an observer. I researched, I learned, I prepared. I tried to understand. I spent hours in libraries. When I became interested in lactation as a teenager, I read everything I could find. And when I wanted something for my future, I researched it. And when I was afraid, I prepared. Maybe knowledge became one of the places where I felt safest. If I could understand something, maybe I could prepare for it. If I could prepare for it, maybe it couldn't surprise me. And if I was paying attention to everything happening around me, maybe I didn't have to pay quite as much attention to what was happening inside of me. I wonder how many of us do this. How many of us become incredibly good at understanding everyone else while becoming strangers to ourselves. We know when someone else is uncomfortable. We know when the mood in the room changes. We hear the smallest shift in someone's voice. We anticipate. We prepare. We adjust. We survive. And then someone asks, "What do you need?" And we have no idea. And maybe that's why the timing of this episode feels meaningful to me. Mercury retrograde, a period I associate with revisiting, reconsidering, going going back over old ground, not necessarily because we need to live in the past, but because sometimes we see something differently when we return. And that's exactly what happened with this episode. I thought I was going to tell you how I returned to my body, but instead, I've I've had to reconsider the entire premise. I've had to go back to the language I used before. I've had to go back to the language I've used about myself, back to the stories I've told myself about healing, back to the assumption that because I've gone to therapy, and because I've learned about my trauma, and because I've built a safer life, because I've broken patterns, surely I should feel safe by now. I should feel healed. I should feel home in my own body. But what if understanding why you left and feeling safe enough to return are two completely different things? Maybe this retrograde wasn't asking me to find an answer. Maybe it's asking me to reconsider the question. Because the story I started with was, I abandoned my body. But I don't think that's the story anymore. When I asked myself how I feel towards my body, the answer was surprisingly simple. I'm not angry with her. She just feels like a complete stranger. So I imagined something. I imagined my body sitting here with me, across the hearth, in the other chair. And I wondered what she would say. Would she be angry? Would she ask where I've been? Would she want to know why I left her alone for so long? But when I actually listened for an answer, that's not what I heard. I think she would tell me, it's okay. You did what you had to do. You kept your mind safe until it was finally an environment where it could begin to process everything. And that changes the story. Because maybe I didn't abandon my body. I was a child. Maybe my mind found somewhere else safe to go. Maybe observing, researching, anticipating, preparing. It wasn't a failure. Maybe it was protection. Maybe my mind and my body made some impossible agreement. My mind would find somewhere safe to hide, and my body would keep carrying me. Until one day, I was somewhere safe enough to begin looking back. And maybe that's where I am now. Not home, not yet, but looking back. And perhaps finally listening when she calls. There's an interesting vulnerability in all of this. Because I created a journal called Return to Your Body, a 7-day somatic reset for women who have forgotten how to feel safe. And I could sit here and pretend I created that journal from the other side, as though I had returned to my body and figured everything out, and then turned around to teach other women how to do the same. But that wouldn't be true. I think I created it because I needed it too. Maybe I was writing directions to a place I was still trying to find. Maybe I wasn't drawing a map from the destination. Maybe I was leaving breadcrumbs along the path. And now the title means something different to me. Return to your body. Return doesn't necessarily mean you've already arrived. Returning is movement. It's something we can choose again and again and again. And maybe, for me, returning doesn't begin with singing an entire song. Maybe I'm not ready for that. Maybe it begins with noticing the urge, noticing the silent note, and instead of being ashamed of it, recognizing it. There you are. Maybe I can meet my body in that tiny vibration no one else can hear. Maybe I can stop demanding that she perform her healing for me. Maybe I can simply listen. I originally thought I should end this episode with some kind of somatic practice, a breathing exercise, something grounding, useful. But I don't think that's where I am today. I don't think I want to tell my body what to do. Maybe I've spent enough of my life doing that. So instead, I think I'd like to introduce myself. Hello, I'm Moon. I'm 37 years old. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm autistic. I'm still learning. I'm still healing. I still don't really know you, but I think I'd like to. I'm sorry we haven't spoken in a while. Thank you for carrying me while I was gone. Thank you for remembering the movements I had to stop making. Thank you for remembering the sounds I learned not to make. Thank you for still reaching for the note. Maybe that's enough for today. Maybe healing doesn't begin when we finally feel completely at home in our bodies. Maybe it begins much earlier. Maybe it begins when we stop blaming ourselves for the ways we survived. Maybe it begins when we revisit the stories we've told about ourselves and allow ourselves to tell them differently. Maybe it begins when we look at the body that carried us through impossible things, and instead of demanding that she heal faster, we say, "Thank you for waiting for me." If your body feels like a stranger, I don't think you have to force yourself to come home today. Maybe today is simply the day you introduce yourself. And before you leave the hearth, I want to leave you with a question. You don't have to answer it now. Maybe this is one of those questions we're meant to return to. Just carry it with you. If your body could speak without interruption, what do you think she would want you to know? Thank you for sitting beside the fire with me. If today's conversation stirred something in you, I created a journal called Return to Your Body, a 7-day somatic reset for women who have forgotten how to feel safe. I'll leave it in the description if you'd like to explore it. And not because I've reached the destination, but because maybe we could walk toward it together. And perhaps that's what I'm taking from this season of revisiting. Sometimes returning doesn't mean going backwards. Sometimes we return because there's something waiting for us that we're finally ready to see, or heal, or hear, or feel, even if for now it's only a silent note. My body may feel like a stranger to me, but maybe she still remembers me. Until next time, come closer to the hearth. The fire is always lit.